A good weekend results-wise for Newcastle United. They beat Sheffield whilst Manchester United and Chelsea could only draw their games. What does that mean for Newcastle United's chances of European qualification? I'm going to get into that in a little bit in the video, but let's begin by breaking down the Newcastle v Sheffield United game. And for me, the first half was really poor. We did not start well in that game at all. Obviously, Sheffield United took the lead with a scrappy goal, but to be perfectly honest with you, the fact we went in level at half-time was lucky for us. Like, we didn't really deserve to be level at half-time. Sheffield United could have easily been 2 or 3-1 up by half-time. And that's not even an exaggeration. Well, they hit the post. They had one that went literally millimetres past the post. Just very not a good start. Our passing was all over the place. Fabian Schär was clearly injured, and that was affecting his performance. In the end, getting to half-time at 1-1 was a good result. What was concerning for me was the fact that, and this has been a theme this season, one ball down the middle of our defence has the ability to kind of unlock us at times. And Sheffield United managed to do that at one point. And it's just, that is very concerning. That is something that for next season we need to definitely work on improving. But that being said, the second half we came out, we started the second half pretty slowly for 5 minutes anyway, but then eventually we did get ahead in the game, and then it was, before you knew it, it was 3-1 basically, and the game was done. Sheffield United's heads went down, and then we carried on, and after 70 minutes it was kind of 5-1, and we were thinking, well, here we go, we could score 8 again or whatever, but in the end we kind of slowed it down a bit, and we just saw the game out comfortably. Nothing less than 3 points was what was required yesterday. And in a sense, at this stage of the season, performances aren't everything. Fantastic to see Bruno on the score sheet. Fantastic to see Isak score another 2. When on earth are we going to see someone get a hat-trick in a Newcastle shirt? It's been so long. We need someone to score a hat-trick. Isak's been so close so many times. He's had 2 goals in so many games. And honestly, even when Wilson came off the bench and grabbed his goal, which was great to see as well, by the way, there was a chance that Wilson, I think, normally would have just taken on him by himself, but he tried to lay it off for Isak, and it didn't come off, and it was just really frustrating. But, I mean, Isak could have had a hat-trick yesterday, and it would have been brilliant, but he didn't, and the hunt for a hat-trick goes on for Newcastle United. Even rubbish teams score hat-tricks, so like Chris Wood scored a hat-trick against us for Forest. Like, why can't we get a hat-trick? It just seems really strange. So let's take a little bit of a deeper look as to where that leaves Newcastle on the run-in, and where that leaves Manchester United and Chelsea as well. I'm going to say West Ham, although they drew with Liverpool, they are currently on... They've played like more games than everyone else and are behind us, and I just cannot see them in their last 3 games being a factor in the qualification for European places. Chelsea, slightly different matter. Thankfully, they dropped points to Villa, which was good, and VAR obviously ruled out a late winner for them, which was, in my opinion, the right decision. Some people seem to think that it wasn't a foul, but I think it was quite a clear shove. Anyway, for Newcastle, in the terms of Newcastle, that was a fantastic decision to go our way, because it means that Chelsea are now just that little bit further behind us than they would be. In 6th place at the moment, Manchester United played 34, 54 points. We're in 7th. Played 34, 53 points. Obviously, West Ham are in 8th, but they've played 35 and only got 49 points. I just think they're 4 points behind with fewer games to play. I can't really see them being a factor. Currently 9th are Chelsea. They've played 33 and got 48 points. So they have a game in hand over us and Manchester United, and that's why they're still in this race for a European spot. Now, let's look at the fixtures and what that's going to mean for us. As we know, Newcastle United need to finish in the top 7 to get some sort of European football next season. Earlier in the week, I made a video explaining how the European qualification process works for the English clubs, because it's not quite as straightforward as it seems. And actually, one of the factors is we could finish 6th and still only qualify for the Europa Conference. So if you want to watch that video, I'll put a link to it at the end of this video. Now, one factor in the run-in is going to be the fact that there might be a bit of scoreboard pressure, if you want to call it that, because of the way the games come and go. Some teams will have played before other teams play, and that can obviously have an effect on league position and points gaps and that sort of thing. And so that can put extra pressure on a team who kick off at a later date or a later time. So Chelsea play their game in hand against Spurs midweek. Now that is at Stamford Bridge, so they're at home. And the result of that game could give us a big picture as to whether Chelsea are going to be a factor in this run-in or not. If Spurs win, then obviously Chelsea will have played the same amount of games as Newcastle and Manchester United, but be 5 points behind Newcastle and 6 points behind Manchester United. Obviously, if they win that game, they're only going to be 2 points behind Newcastle and 3 points behind Manchester United, and therefore are really in the hunt for a place with any kind of slip up for either of those other two teams. That game is absolutely huge, and that comes first before the rest of the teams kind of play out the season on level games. Now, interestingly, the next round of fixtures after the Chelsea-Spurs game is at the weekend, and Newcastle play first against Burnley away. Then that's followed by Chelsea kicking off against West Ham, which is at home, and then on the Monday night, Manchester United play Palace away. So all three teams play on different days, and that could really mix things up. So if Newcastle win against Burnley, for example, they'll go above Manchester United, and that will put pressure on Manchester United against Crystal Palace away, which, as we know, as Newcastle supporters, we know Crystal Palace away is not an easy game at the moment, and we came a cropper there earlier in the week, which was a bit of a shame. We hope for a similar result for Palace against Manchester United, because that could really help us. Now, we've got our own issues with our away form anyway, so Burnley away is no easy game for us. Just because Burnley are in the relegation zone doesn't mean we're not going to find that easy. I mean, we haven't played well against a lot of the lower teams in the league this season as it is, and that's kind of one of the things that I want to see us improve on a lot next season. You know, we've given points to the likes of Luton and Nottingham Forest. Once next weekend's round of fixtures are out of the way, there's only 3 games left for each team, so we'll have a better idea about Chelsea at that point, because obviously once they've played Spurs and West Ham, they could be out of the running at that point, depending on results, or they could be well and truly in it, depending on if they pick up the wins and Newcastle and Man United drop points. There's a chance Chelsea are still in the race. So obviously we'll reevaluate that close to the time. But let's assume that they're kind of still in the hunt. At the end of the season, each team then plays their last 3 games. And Newcastle's running is Brighton at home, then Manchester United away, and then Brentford away. And Manchester United have got Arsenal at home, then Newcastle at home, followed by Brighton away on the last day. And Chelsea have Forest away, Brighton away, and Bournemouth at home. So on paper, you would say Chelsea probably have the better run in the last 3 games. So we're kind of hoping that Chelsea drop points before that against Spurs and West Ham, and obviously they dropped points against Villa, which was good for us. Manchester United's running, they've obviously played Burnley and Sheffield United, and they've only taken 4 points from those 2 games. A massive thing for Newcastle would be to have obviously taken the 3 points against Sheffield, but then also take another 3 points against Burnley, because that means we would have outscored Manchester United in those 2 fixtures in our run-in, and that's kind of really important. And we need, obviously, Palace to do us a bit of a favour maybe at that point too. Although if Palace don't do us a favour, that's not the end of the world either, because obviously Manchester United still have to play Arsenal. It's a very hard game for them. Arsenal are well and truly still going for the title, so that's hopefully still the case when they go to Old Trafford. But then they play us. Like, Newcastle have to go to Old Trafford and play Manchester United. And what's interesting about that game is we might have some more players back at that point. So Joe Linton might be a factor. Kieran Trippier might be a factor. It's very, very exciting, the thought of going to Manchester United, basically deciding who finishes 6th or not. So that will be a really massive game for us. And obviously we hope we come out on the right side of that. All in all, it's very, very interesting. But even if all that happens, the fact is it possibly might go down to the last game of the season anyway to decide who finishes 6th and 7th or whatever. And then we have Brentford away, Man United have Brighton away, and Chelsea have Bournemouth at home. So on paper, you would kind of think that each of those teams would like their fixtures. I think Brighton away, Man United probably won't like that too much. Brentford could be tricky away from home, although they're not doing great things this season, but then you can argue Brighton aren't either. And Bournemouth at home for Chelsea is, again, it's what they would class as a winnable game. So it is all to play for, and I do expect, actually, this 6th and 7th place thing to go right down to the last game, I think. Even if we do finish 6th and above Manchester United in the league, it doesn't actually guarantee us Europa League football next season, because Manchester United still have to play their FA Cup final a week after the season finishes. And if they win that game, then they will go into the Europa League and we would drop into the UEFA Conference League, as it's going to be called from next season. Overall, though, the fact that Manchester United dropped points to Burnley yesterday made me feel a lot better about the fact that we have closed that gap to them to 1 point. It makes it feel very, very possible that we could still finish 6th.